Welcome to Leaving Nothing to Chance, your go-to podcast where we bring you insights from some of the most influential voices in small business and personal development. Each week, we dive deep into conversations with top thought leaders, authors, and business moguls from around the world, sharing their secrets to success and strategies for growth. Tune in for exclusive content that will inspire, motivate, and equip you to take your journey to the next level. This is Leaving Nothing to Chance.
Hey, everybody. This is going to be a very fun interview with a very interesting gentleman, Mr. Philipp Von Holtzendorff-Fehling. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thanks so much for having me.
We've got a lot to cover, but let me tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we'll come back with a few questions. You're a coach, you're a conscious entrepreneur, as well as an energy healer. In parallel to a successful international business career, he had found that he had worked through some blockages and barriers that had prevented him from fully connecting to his true self. With that, he started to work in energy fields and did a lot of training in shamanic and other energy healing practices. During his business career, he worked as an executive for several well-known companies, including T-Mobile International, as well as T-Mobile US, where he served as a vice president. He's the founder and CEO of Lila Quantum Tech and Quantum Upgrade. While he's also a passionate bio and bioenergy hacker in his personal life, he's also a Kundalini yoga teacher, a father of two, loves dogs, and last year was #1 in men's tennis in the 50-plus division. And if that's not enough, I'm sure we're going to add to it. That's a pretty full resume, to say the least. Appreciate your time today. And let's just start at the top. You're born in Germany and immigrated to the U.S. What did you say, 2000?
Yeah, I came to the US a few times already and lived there in the 90s for about a year. And then in 2010, I came back for good and I've stayed here. I also live in Costa Rica a part of the year. And I do go back to Europe for business and to visit family and friends. But my main home indeed is the US and has been since 2010.
Great, great. So let's just talk a little bit about some of the things that you overcame, some of the blockages and barriers that you were finding in your life that you worked really hard and figured out some answers to.
Yeah, so in the early 2000s, I realized that I had cut myself off my own emotions and feelings, really, my intuition. I discredited my own intuition and the intuition in others. And I was in an unhappy place in my life. And that was the moment where I figured there is more to life and I need to find myself. That was the sentence, right? Find myself again. I didn't even know what that means, but I went out to find myself. And I did that through meditation, through yoga. I went through various shamanic healing courses and trainings. I got trained in past life regression work and various other energy healing techniques. And not really with the goal to help others at the time, but it was more to help myself. Then it morphed into being able to help others too. But the realization came relatively quickly that we all come into this life with a backpack that's already filled with stuff. And then we pack it even more with traumas that we get and with negative experiences. So that happens in the childhood. We get yelled at. Then, I don't know, maybe your first girlfriend and she leaves us for someone else. Everyone has their own stories, or we have other traumas, like we get run over by a bus and break our leg, whatever that means or whatever that is. And all that gets into this backpack until at some point we get heavier and heavier. And then at some point we realize it's our freaking job to empty that backpack. Mm-hmm. And then as we start doing that, we lighten the load that we carry around and we can start to live a happier life. And we get closer and closer to who we truly are. And that's the process that I went through. And so I indeed found myself. I started to even see energy fields and things like that. And yeah, so now looking back, I would say, what an amazing journey, having forgotten everything. And then you just remember all these things, and which ultimately culminated into what I'm doing today. And we'll probably get into that.
Yeah, we sure will. Always interested where somebody's come from in life and all those realizations. By the way, I love your analogy of emptying the proverbial backpack that we all carry with stuff. We could use a stronger word, but
Yeah.
how did you get into the training, the shamanic training and all of that? How did that kind of happen, or by design, or just said, hey, one day, hey, I want to start studying these ancient rituals and beliefs and everything? How did it all occur, and what's been the process been, and where are you at with that today?
So I have very strong antennas, I would say. And even at the time where I felt completely disconnected from myself, I did have these antennas in moments where I needed them. And when I got into meditation and yoga, that was the first layer that I worked on. And then at some point, I saw an invitation somewhere, and I can't even remember where, to some chakra course. And I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. I had no idea what that was, but I felt like I needed to go. So I went there and did this course, and that opened up a whole new world for me. And from there, I was checking, okay, what else could I do in this area? That's how I got into that. Really, I found a few amazing healers. At some point, I tried to find like the best healers I could find across the world to see what are they capable of and what could I learn from them. And also realize that they all work with the quantum field and they all work with frequencies. And my curiosity and interest, yeah, were initially sparked and then got bigger and bigger.
And when you say healing, okay, so you had things to be healed from. You don't have to disclose whatever that was. You feel free to if you want. But how long a process from when you started and said, okay, I need to deal with X, whatever X was? How long did it take?
So I would almost say nowadays that the full complete healing, I don't know if it will ever happen for anyone, because there's always something you can solve. It literally never stops. So I can't even answer that question. The stuff that I wanted to heal at the time was my disconnectedness and my feeling of being unhappy and not really knowing like why I'm here, what am I doing, and so how can I live a fulfilled life and a happy life. From that, I got healed. 100%. I didn't have any physical ailments. Thankfully, I never had anything bad physically. But yeah, so I live a fulfilled life and am pretty happy. And I found myself throughout the process. And that was the process. I can't tell you how long that was. And I think it came in spirals, to be honest. But I can tell you that every month there's something new you can release, which is amazing. And you lift yourself up even more. You get into higher and higher vibrations. And just because you're that high on a vibrational level doesn't mean that there isn't some stuff next week that you can solve for or work through to become even lighter. And at that point, it's a fun journey, though.
Do you unpack? Okay, so let's just say you release a problem or you release a person, maybe a negative, toxic person in your life, right? We've all had them. I know I just released a couple over the last couple months myself. And all of a sudden, it's kind of like you let some people go out of your life, and I don't want to say better people, I can term it that way, but different people maybe come into your life that are better influences or suit your life better. Is that something that you found?
Yeah, I never worked on that. Like, I never felt I needed to release people or find new people. I think that just happened naturally through my own evolution. But yeah, these things happen because we all have our own true inner essence, and then we have a frequency state or a vibrational state. And as we move into new vibrational states, and other people don't, and they may become a burden, or we realize, oh, these are energy suckers. So naturally, they just tend to get out of our lives one way or another. And then people that match our vibration more or are more beneficial in that part of our lives, they enter our lives. Yeah, but the stuff I'm talking about were more inner, that this all inner work related, not like focused on the outside, because the way that reality works is also that the outside always reflects the inside. And so I could not brush my teeth in the mirror. That just wouldn't work. I would have to do it here. And that's what most people still get wrong. They try to change their job, change their friendships, change their wife, whatever, move to a different country in order to have a happy life. And in some cases, yeah, that may actually be the right solution, but it would have to come really from the inside, because I need to change my vibrational state. And the way I vibrate, that is what I call into my life. So if I vibrate in anger and shame and in guilt, and then I travel or move to a different country and I still vibrate in the same state, I'm going to have the same shitty situation that I had before in a different country. So I need to change me, myself, and then I can see all these positive ripple effects in the outside world as well.
Question on that. How can somebody raise their vibration to attract more of what they either want to be or believe that they are? Are there tools to do that?
Yes, there are a lot of tools. It starts with tools that really don't cost anything other than our attention and our time. And that is hard to allocate nowadays for most people, because we're so addicted to what's going on in our daily lives. We're so addicted to our phones and to sucking up what's going on in the world, right? The easiest and fastest way, I would say, that I've come across is every morning before you get up. So you wake up, and the very first thing you do, you don't grab your phone, you don't talk to your spouse, you don't do anything else. You just ask yourself, how do I feel? And then you just let that just echo and resonate. You don't even have to have an answer. You just feel into yourself and you're asking yourself that question. And the same thing you do again at night when you're in bed. That's the last thing you do. No more phone, no more talking to anyone. You just talk to yourself real quick. How do I feel? Maybe ask yourself, how was my day? How do I feel? Like, and again, you don't have to have an answer. As a matter of fact, it's better to not have the answer right away. Just listen. If you do that for 2 weeks, you'll change and shift so significantly, because you get much more connected with your inner self and your inner voice. And that is the most powerful thing we have. The most powerful and important relationship we have is the one with ourselves. If we can get that to a better state, also all of our other relationships will be better. And so that's the most time effective way, I think. Then, of course, you can do meditation, you can do yoga, you can do Tai Chi, you can do all of those mindfulness practices that don't cost anything. Being in nature, connecting with nature, just to connect, just for the purpose of connecting and for just being there. And I know we have our busy lives, and I have a busy life too. I can't do that all the time, but let's find the moments in between where we can do that. And certainly then there's technologies like ours that we develop that can help with that 24/7. But again, there are a lot of things that we can do that don't cost anything.
And along those lines, like I'm reading a book right now, Breathe, and fascinating book. And you think, breathe, well, breathe. We don't have to be told to breathe. We don't. You just do that. The second you're born, you breathe till the second you die. But how we breathe. Can you talk a little bit about breath work and how important that is to maybe relax people and calm them and get them clear on what they should be doing versus maybe what they should not?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. As a matter of fact, the breath is what keeps us, if we're consciously breathing and we're aware of our breathing, we are right there in the present now, in the everlasting now, because there is no past and there is no future. That's very important to understand. Yes, they exist in our minds, but not in reality. In reality, always only the exact now exists. And the breath takes us right there to feel this present. And it's so powerful. And from there, we can change so many different things. So the breath takes us there. Then we can have different types of breath works that can release energetic blockages, or they can wake us up energetically. They can even help us with blood circulation and things like that, right? We can harmonize the brain hemispheres by certain types of breathing. All that is possible. And so I'm a big proponent of breath and conscious breathing as part of the Kundalini yoga practice also. And I tell you what, it's not that just like some weird people do breath work, right? Listen to Novak Djokovic, one of the best, most successful tennis players of all times. The most important practice for him, and he would tell you, it's conscious breathing on the court. What's the most important thing to do on the court? Conscious breathing. It's more important for him than to think about his serve or the next point or whatever the last point. It's conscious breathing.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and certainly has worked well for him, no doubt. But I know just in my latter years, I got very into bench pressing and bench press competitions, and same thing there. You can't take the weight off the bar and just bring it down. It's not going to go anywhere. If you don't deep breathe, you're going to eat the bar. And not only is that bad for your health, but you're not going to get the lift. It's the same thing like the best lifters in the world, and probably for that matter, the best Olympic lifters too. It's like they got to breathe, right? The best martial artist, ki, when you throw. So it's so important, and yet we don't think about it. Like until I was aware of it a little bit because I have done some yoga. And I got two sisters who are yogis, so I probably should do more. And I'm in the process of doing that. I promise that. But to that point, it's just something we don't think about until somebody puts it in front of us and says, "How are you breathing?" So, question along that line: how do we get people more conscious of that? To your point, okay, the people who are into yoga, they know that. A guy like Djokovic knows that. Athletes know that. But the other 99% of the people walking the planet that might be so stressed out where they need 4 cups of Starbucks a day, they think, to function. How do we get those people to just say, hey, sit back and take a couple of breaths and take a couple of deep breaths? How do you coach people, I guess is my question, to get them thinking along that line that there's something so simple that they could do with so many great outcomes?
It's a great question. And I think in some cases that's an impossible task, right? Because there's free will out there. And some people are open to that and really would like to get out of their misery. And then those people you can indeed help with some coaching or some showing them how to breathe and how to do it, and they'll realize relatively quickly how beneficial it is, and then they hopefully stick with it, and then they do other mindfulness practices. They probably get into our technology and things like that. But there are also people out there that are not ready, and usually, interestingly, that is usually because of fear. The people that don't get into really connecting with themselves, I would say in 99.9% of the cases, it's fear.
Mm.
And why is that? Because they feel very comfortable in how they operate in the outer world with their job. That's every day the same, with all the same people and everything. Everything is controllable somewhat with their brain. This other world is full of like traps almost, right? Because all the buried feelings are there, all the traumas are there that you encounter, the energy blockages, and it's almost like a very slippery slope, right? Because we can't control that, and then suddenly we deal with feelings that may come up, and for a lot of people, especially men, it's scary and it's funny, right? Because the man should be the first ones to say, oh, if it's scary, I'll just go into that. But no, that's not what they do. And then certainly the narrative, I think, of the last hundreds of years here on Earth hasn't helped, right? Because it's rather been a focus on all the material, all the physical, almost to a point where people would say energy doesn't exist, which is the most laughable thing, right? We've forgotten completely that we're energy and frequency to begin with. That's actually all we are. It's the most fundamental truth. Yet most people aren't even aware of it. They haven't even thought about it. Who are you? If you ask people, who are you? They wouldn't be able to tell you really who they are. They tell you, yeah, I'm Paul and I work at McDonald's and I'm 66 years old. Yeah, okay. And is that really who you are?
Mm.
Don't know. But then they become uncomfortable because it's not a problem not knowing that, but I find it's a problem if you don't even want to find out. And then what you need to do is you need to cope. You need to try to, I don't know, maybe use drugs or alcohol in order to just, I don't know, shut off this inner voice, which the inner voice is the most beautiful thing we have. And the opposite is where the freedom waits, right? It may be uncomfortable at first to dig in and to allow feelings and getting connected again with our inner voice. And maybe we also have days where it doesn't really work and we feel frustrated. But eventually that's where the freedom waits.
And it's interesting talking about this because I'm somewhat familiar with Ayurvedic medicine. And if you look at our Indian friends and our Chinese friends, whether it's that they practice Ayurvedic or they practice traditional Chinese medicine, both cultures understand what you're talking about with energy, nadis, and all the flow of energy throughout the body. And sometimes here in North America, we we shouldn't, but we sometimes look at these other cultures like, what do they know? We've been around 10,000 years. We've been around 250. And so we must know more than they do. Actually, it's the reverse. But my question on that would be, how do we get a North American or a German for that matter, because we can be a little thick ourselves sometimes when it comes to these things, or a Brit, or somebody that comes from a culture that's a little more into, let's just call it contemporary medicine or contemporary thought that says, wait a minute, this energy flow, there's cultures and systems of taking care of yourself that have existed for thousands of years successfully. Why don't you just investigate it? Make your own decision. How do you get somebody to be open-minded, I guess, is my question, to look at some of these other things that have been so successful in some of these other cultures around the world?
Honestly, don't do that anymore. If people are open-minded enough and curious enough and they truly want to know, they don't understand and they don't know, but they ask because they want to know, I help them. I can spend hours telling them or going with them there. But people that are not open-minded at all and they just don't want to know, you can feel those people. I don't waste my time with them. And it's not my job to do it. It's their own problem, to be honest. It really is, because if someone is closed-minded and they're not ready yet, it's not my job to pull them out of the dirt. I can give them some information, but that's about it. Look, you're responsible for your own life, and I'm happy to help, but just don't be like a closed-minded a-hole and you don't want to know, right? You ask, but you really don't want to know. So
That's fact. I agree with you.
you don't come to my booth at a conference and as a jerk and say, bah, this works at all, and just go somewhere else. But if someone comes, hey, I don't believe in this, I can't feel energy, but can you walk me through this? Like, how does this work, and what can I maybe do? I'll spend 2 hours with them. That doesn't even matter to me, time at that point. You get what I'm saying. It's some people you can't save, and others you're more than happy to tell them all.
Yeah, they got to have a willingness to want to learn and be a little bit open-minded, I guess, to the point. So let's talk about some of the business stuff that you're involved with now. You're the founder and CEO of Lila Quantum Tech and Quantum Upgrade. And tell us about those businesses.
Yeah, we developed the technology that can imprint pure natural quantum energy into any object, and you can leverage it for any physiological organism to improve the biofield. And with that, it has very positive ripple effects in the body. So we're talking about humans in that case, but we're also talking about pets and animals because it's very beneficial for those as well. It even is beneficial for plants. So any living organism, it's alive. Our technology can help. So we work with a pure natural quantum energy, as I said, and we figured it out on how to make super concentrated quantum energy available so that we can leverage it for our well-being. We can also combine it with specific frequencies. Frequency is the same as information, in order to promote further or deeper positive changes, whether that is to improve your blood, to improve the heart rate variability, which is linked to the autonomic nervous system, whether it is to improve the cellular function, so ATP production or wound healing and cell recovery, or to even show that our technology can significantly de-stress your brain. And last but not least, it helps to structure water to improve foods and beverages, but also to harmonize electromagnetic fields to the point that negative effects of electromagnetic fields on the human body or the animal body get neutralized.
Interesting. Wow. Let's talk about the brain a little bit. You just mentioned the brain, and something that a lot of our listeners are fascinated with, obviously, because, and I discuss this a lot. I interview a lot of medical folks as well. And I'm 64. And when I think of my grandparents, I only knew one grandmother. The other three were dead by the time I was born. I was born at the tail end of my family. But, and I ask a lot of people, I say, tell me what your grandparents died of. And a lot of times they'll say old age. Okay, what was old age? It was 70, 75, 64, and sometimes 80 something. And then you found the outlier that lived to 102, right? You've always had that in different cultures. But my question on that is, we never really heard of people dying of Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, brain-related diseases, as we know, as we might call them today. So how does this technology work with the brain? Because those three things, to me, not that they've figured out cancer and heart disease, but they've come a long way. If people want to be treated, you can live with those diseases today that maybe our grandparents' generation couldn't. How does your technology work with the brain to help the brain? Because that, to me, that's, by 2050, there's supposed to be more Parkinson's, for example, and Alzheimer's. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the brain and how you can help.
And by the way, for those specific ones, we're currently developing also specific frequencies. So in the next 30 days, we will have those frequencies also available. But those are in addition to what we can already do today. So I'll walk you through the recent study that was done in Europe in regards to the brain with our technology. And it was done with the most advanced EEG device on the market in Europe. And there is no better one in the US either. We have looked and could not find even anything that comes close. It has 256 channels. It costs about, I would say, 140, 150,000 US dollars, that device. And it can see everything and visualize everything in the brain, including the limbic system, and tell you exactly what's going on. So in this study, they had test persons that would get tested in an electromagnetic field-free room. So there was no EMF whatsoever. They had a 10-minute baseline reading where you can see that the brain waves flow naturally. It's a completely natural flow of brain waves. Then these people were put in a chair and an iPhone 15 was put right next to their ear, and a 5G call was simulated for 30 minutes. So people developed headaches, people were getting uncomfortable and felt stressed. Some started sweating. Those were subjective physical feelings. But the EEG showed, first of all, that all the brain waves then were put in an artificial box. They were not flowing naturally anymore. Everything that is associated with stress in the brain waves got amplified significantly, and everything that's associated with balance and a calm state went into the basement and got just totally knocked off. So that is what happened. Then our technology got introduced. In this case, that you can use the quantum upgrade with the brain support frequency, or you could use one of our blocks that we have. And then you would, in this case, also have to add the brain support frequency to get these incredible benefits. But the blocks on their own would also provide already significant benefits, but even more with the brain support frequency. So what happened, and I give you just now three markers here. So the beta and the gamma activity, which are linked to stress in the brain, were reduced by around about 80%. And that happened pretty much instantly, and it stayed like that, even though these people were still on these phones. They still had everything going on with the 5G call. And the alpha activity in the limbic system, that's the state you want to have a lot of, was increased by 13x. I repeat, by 13x. And so that's absolutely significant. So what happens there, how do I translate that to people that don't really know what that means? You can look it up, the alpha activity in the limbic system, for example, but it brings you into a calm state. It de-stresses your brain, but it's not that you then fall asleep or anything. No, the opposite is the case. You're very clear. You're very clear. You can process information even better. So your cognitive function, at least from a subjective feeling, improves. And that's actually also objectively then measured in the brain waves. So it clears the fog, basically, and de-stresses the brain. That is what we're capable of already today. And yeah, and then there's room for further improvement in regards to specific conditions. Now, I need to be a little bit careful because we don't want to be a medical device company, and we are not. And so I don't really want to make any claims or promises or even frequencies for specific conditions, health conditions, but people can find stuff that they can use in various states. Let's say it that way.
Great. Because one of the things, or it gives me a couple of other questions here, and I will stay away from the claims because YouTube does listen to my show, believe it or not.
And some claims we can absolutely claim certain things because they're validated and we have over 40 placebo-controlled studies, and we can definitely make claims. We just don't make any claims in regards to any disease or health conditions because we are no doctors and we don't want to be.
What's the delivery system you're using though this is through their phone, or what kind of delivery system for the person using it?
Yeah, let's explain that real quick. So there's two companies. One is the Lila Quantum Tech, and that is a company that has all kinds of different physical products that you can leverage. A little capsule like this, for example, that people can hang around their neck or they put it in their pocket. That's like the entry-level product. Then we have these quantum energy generators called blocks, like Infinity Block or the Super Block or the Travel Block. They have plates on the top and plates on the bottom. And the way that works is if you have two magnets in your hands, you have a magnetic force field at some point, right? You feel it. The same we're able to create on a quantum level where the plates are infused with super concentrated quantum energy. And if you align them, you have a quantum force field. And within this quantum force field, it's such a strong field and such a base layer of existence that it can harmonize, for example, electromagnetic fields, but also other things so that they become suddenly beneficial to us. That's pretty much how that works. And so the delivery mechanism would be a product, would be one of those blocks that you put in your home. By the way, you can also infuse your water with that or your foods and things like that. You can put your hands in there and you would actually see your blood improve significantly in just a few minutes on pretty much all levels, whether that is red blood cell health, oxygenation in the blood, white blood cell activity, parasitic load in the blood, things like that. That's all the physical products. That's Lila Quantum Tech, lilaq.com. Then we have a company called Quantum Upgrade, and that works completely remotely via quantum entanglement. And for some people, that's still a new concept. Probably for most people it is. It's not so new though, because first of all, we're all connected. That's just one fact that most of us have forgotten. In 2022, the Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded for work on quantum entanglement. So it really isn't a new concept. New is maybe that we can apply it now. And so we can literally apply it. We have built a system, which is one of the most powerful sources of quantum energy on Earth. And you can sign up and get your customized quantum field. And that would be delivered indeed just through energy. It's like a Netflix subscription. If you sign up for Netflix and then you could get to select on your phone, oh, I want to watch, I don't know, Ted Lasso. Okay. And then you watch Ted Lasso and then that happens. So you can make these changes, but the trick is you can receive this quantum field everywhere you go and you control it. So you can say at any time, I want to decrease the energy or increase it, or I want a specific frequency. Maybe you want a common rest frequency for the night. Maybe you want to run a marathon tomorrow and you need something that is great for athletic performance, things like that. So you can book in a specific frequency, and that system does that. It's measurable. It's like we just for the quantum upgrade by now, I think we have over 14 placebo-controlled trials that were done that are absolutely stunning, right? It's usually the case where the investigators in the lab or the institute, they say, well, that can't work, right? Nothing is going to happen. And then they're proven wrong within a few seconds.
Wow. Now, this is interesting. So if people want to take a look at that information, is there one website, or I know there's several companies, but where do they go to find out about this?
Yeah, so the latter one, the quantum upgrade, they would find under quantumupgrade.io. Again, quantumupgrade.io. And that may be interesting for people because you can try it for free. You can try it for 15 days for free if you put in code Philipp15, Philipp15, Philipp with one L, please, and with 2P, one L and 2P, and the number 15. And you get 15 days for free. You don't even have to provide a credit card or any other payment information, nothing. Just you go there and you try it for 15 days and for yourself. And then if you want to have it, you would need to subscribe, and then it's like a month-to-month thing. But yeah, there's no obligation to just try it.
The number one benefit of being a podcaster is how many things I get to try. So I will be signing up for that. So that's Philip with two P's, folks. On the end, there's obviously a P in the beginning and two P's on the end, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And then the other, if you're interested in the physical products, it's the website lilaq.com. That's LEELAQ.com. And then I give you one more interesting piece here of information. So if you want to learn more about all this stuff and you're like, oh, okay, I want to hear from other people and not just the founder, there are private Telegram groups for the physical products and also for the quantum upgrade. And you can access those through our website. There is a Telegram icon on these, and you can get into these groups that way. And then you can listen in what people say, and you can even ask questions. And then you can have real people, thousands of people that use our products answer your questions.
When did you start this company? How long ago did this start?
2019, we started with Lila Quantum Tech. And then I think in 2022, we launched Quantum Upgrade.
Fantastic, folks. Yeah, I'm certainly going to try. Nothing to lose, right? No side effects, right? Just try it. If it works, great. If you don't like it, don't continue it.
Correct. And, by now we have various world champions and Olympians using our technology, and that number of top athletes in the world that use our tech, whether that is professional motocross riders or professional surfers or professional tennis and golf players, NFL players even, they use it because they feel the difference. They notice the difference in performance and they have a faster recovery. And that is what it is about for them. If twice boxing world champion Natalie Zimmerman from Germany, for example, she does not care how it works. She cares that it works. And that's the same also with world champion in water skiing and world record holder Neely Ross. She's actually from the Orlando area, or lives in the Orlando area, I should say. I think she's from Canada originally. So stuff works. And just because it's a new concept on how it works doesn't mean it doesn't work. It's the same as if we were to go back to the 1900s now with our smartphones. And then you and I would tell people on the street what we can do with this. And then they would be like, these crazy people here, did you hear what they just said? That is impossible. Of course you cannot do that. You cannot just talk to someone and then even see his picture if that one is in a different continent, right? They would laugh at us.
There's a crazy show my son got me watching, and I always forget the name of it, but it's like a Star Trek spinoff that the guy who did Family Guy created. The name always escapes me. When I want to tell somebody, you might know the show, but it's like a Star Trek in the future, 500 years. And there's an episode like that where a guy finds a cell phone and he has to explain to people what the iPhone was, because the technology obviously by then will be probably talk to your finger or something. And it reminded, when you said that, it just reminded me of that. But this is fascinating. I can talk about this stuff all day, but for the sake of time, we won't. But this is fascinating. So tell me this. Let's talk a little bit about some. This is fun stuff to me, but maybe our listeners want to hear a little bit about your tennis life and how you tied in your fitness, your obviously your brain patterning being positive, your breathing, your Kundalini training, etc. You're a lifelong tennis player, or start older years, or tell us a little bit about your tennis life.
I started when I was 6 and then I stopped when I was 18. I did not play in college. I actually stopped playing for 14 years, I would say. And then at some point I started to get back into it and really enjoyed it and just played for fun. There was a year, I think about 10 years ago. Now it's 11 years ago, where I said, okay, I want to play the nationals in the US once and one other tournament. So I did that and I played a couple of tournaments. I became number 23 in the US at that time. That was my best ranking I'd ever had. And then I didn't play tournaments for 10 years. And in between, even stopped playing for another 4 years completely. And then in the beginning of last year, my wife and I separated. And I felt that I needed to put my energy into something in addition to what I was doing. And I felt, okay, so what is this? And I was like, well, I always wanted to play even more tennis and in these tournaments. And I couldn't really do that in our relationship because it's a lot of travel also that then is involved. And so I said, I'll do it and I see what I can do. And of course, I'm 51 now, but my biological age is way younger because of how I live. I live a healthy life. I apply a lot of biohacking. I use our technology all the time, which literally helps on all levels. And yeah, and then I got into it. And then relatively quickly, I made it to the top 20. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can do top 10. So I did top 10. And then I was like, okay, let's try top 5 and then top 5. And then I became number 1, I think, after 5 months or 6 months of doing that. And yeah, that was hard work, but I would say I couldn't have done it without our technology. Of course, you need to be able to be really good and fit and have some basic great shots and stuff like that. But our technology gave me the extra edge. And yeah, that was a big achievement.
Great, great. So if people just kind of wrap up, if people said if there was one thing they could do today to better themselves, physically, mentally, spiritually, what would it be?
To me, that's exactly what I said initially, the 1 minute in the morning and the 1 minute in the back. So if you've watched this show here now, go back to that, where you just ask yourself, how do I feel? Let it resonate for about a minute in the morning and in the evening, first and the last thing you do in your day. And then if you want to top that, after that, you say to yourself at night, okay, I believe something wonderful happens to me tomorrow. Okay. And if it's already in the morning, and you do that 3-4 times, that you repeat that. And then the next day, if you wake up again, you ask yourself, how do you feel? And you just stick with it. You try to connect with your inner voice through that. And it's a process. It may not happen right away, right? It may even feel uncomfortable, but it really will get you there. And then also then say, okay, I believe something wonderful happens to me today. And that's the addition. Then what does that do? It basically wires you towards something positive, to expect the positive, to with curiosity of what may happen in the day. Those two things, I think, are the cheapest, the fastest things to do with a really great impact.
Okay, so let me flip the question now too. If there was one thing they should stop doing or believing today, what would that be?
So definitely stop believing that you're not worth it and that you're not good enough. And most people have that within themselves somewhere. We may not consciously think about that all the time, but it's in most people, it's a subconscious thing. And remember that over 95% of the things that are going on in our system are subconscious. And that is part of the vibration that attracts also the negative stuff. So try to get out of these lower vibrations. And one thing is to really like yourself and know that you're worth it and try to shift that.
Great.
There are more things like that, obviously. You asked for one thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's quite a bit. And if people want to reach you or they want to see additional information about the products or anything else we talked about today, what's the best place for folks to reach out to you?
Yeah, get on the website, check that out. And through Telegram, if you really want to get in touch with me personally, you could do that on Instagram. Maybe that's at Philipp with one L and two P and then _ VHF. I never had an Instagram account. I never wanted one. I never used Instagram. But a year and a half ago, my team was like, you got to have an Instagram account. You can't not have one. Run these businesses. We need you to have one. So now I have an Instagram account.
Great, great. Well, this has been a privilege and I learned a lot. I'm certainly going to try these technologies. And thank you so much for your time, especially on a busy Saturday. And just once again, thank you so much. This has been very enlightening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check back weekly for more exciting episodes. And don't miss Ink and Insight every Wednesday, where we celebrate iconic authors and dive into their impactful works.